But sometimes you have to go above the mean arterial to really tapping out that bleeding and clear your field of view. But that's why you're using a fluid management system, so you can monitor and watch the deficit at the same time. So once again, my recommendation, ask anesthesia, what's her mean arterial pressure? Let's say it's 85. We'll set that for 85.
These still need to be checked, they just put them in the case.
And what that tells you is our pressure is set for 85. This upper number tells you what it actually is while you're working. The next thing we have to determine is your deficit. Where do you want the machine to start alarming? Do you guys have a cutoff?
That's all the docs. Well,
That's up to the docs?
That's up to the docs.
Okay. Once again, AAGL, ACOG, the maximum recommendation they have is 2,500 for saline.
Okay.
I think it's 1,500 for glycine, sorbitol, mannitol. You all determine what that is, but in some facilities they say it's 2,500. So they'll set the deficit for 2,000. And the reason they set it for 2,000, there's nothing worse than you all work in this every day than telling a doctor, you gotta stop. So if you go to 2,000, right, you got a little bit of runway left. By setting that to 2,000, what's going to happen is this green bar is going to go from from green to yellow to red once you hit 2,000. Once it hits 2,000, you can always go up. The maximum is 2,500. Okay? Your pressure, the maximum pressure setting that you can go on this is 150. Now once you hit 100, it beeps. Take your finger off, hit it again, and you can go up to 150. Okay, so we're going to bring it back to 85. Okay? So all we've done is we've set what our pressure is, and we've set where we want our deficit to start alarming. The next thing we have to do is prime. So what I'm going to ask you to do is always ask the question, Doc, is your inflow open? And it has to be open.
And make sure you dump it off.
They'll hold it over the bag, and if you can hit the prime button. Once again, what's the prime doing? It's going to get the air out, and then it's going to calibrate this pump to this specific scope. And you're going to see this wheel stop and start and stop and start. What I'm also doing now, though, is I'm looking to make sure that my vacuum is working, that my suction is working. When it's done calibrating, you're going to hear a beep, and you're going to get a message there.
Okay.
Okay? What does it say?
Prime successful, pump operating.
Okay? So I turn off my outflow, my inflow. I open my outflow just to get all the fluid back out. And then what we're going to do is zero it. So if you could press and hold the 0 button, okay? We're ready to roll. Those are the steps.
So it's going from 0 to negative.
Right, it's checking this like multiple times per second.
Okay.
It's extremely sensitive. It's gonna feel the vibrations in the floor read.
Okay.
When you're done though, you pause it and it'll lock in.
Okay.
Okay? So from this point, we're set and ready to work with it.
Right.
A couple things you need to know. You can move this around. You can lean on it.
You can lean on it?
You can put things on top of it.
Okay.
I wouldn't recommend sitting on it.
Okay.
You can add a bag of fluid. Okay? The only time you have to pause this machine is if you're touching those canisters.
Okay.
So you can't
The
change
pause button is right there.
Okay.
However, nobody ever remembers to pause it,
Does
right?
it pause it all the time?
You've seen it. So the minute you touch it,
The pressure.
that paused it.
Yeah.
That turned off your inflow and your pumps.
Okay.
Do your canister change and resume. when we designed this, we went to nurses. Usually we go to doctors. With this is something that the nurses use. And we asked them, what do we need to have on this? That was a main priority. They said, listen, I don't care what pump you're working with, Strike or Storz, all the pumps that are out there, when you change the fluid or add fluid or touch the canisters, you're supposed to pause it. Guys, I do this for a living. I'm out there every day in a multitude of hospitals. They never do it. And you all have seen where the pump deficit goes from 143 to 962 in a matter of seconds. And what it was they didn't pause the system and they threw everything
The system off, yeah.
So it's fail-proof.
Good.
You just have to remember to turn it back on. And the menu tells you where you are in the stage. I told you earlier, there's a microchip in the tubing. One of the troubleshooting steps is not to turn it off and turn it on. I know that's a widely used troubleshooting method. If you do it with this, you'll get an error message that says insert new tube set or something like that, okay? It's intended for one-time use. Just know that. There's a troubleshooting guide card attached here with a multitude of troubleshooting. I've got to be honest with you. I've been using this for 2 years. I just don't see error messages come up other than the standard error message of reprime, right? Or it's paused or things like that. But if you get a weird error message, you've got a card right here. I talked a little bit about the tubing. Oh, so I was talking to you earlier. The inflow is measured by the rotation of the wheels. So what happens if you run out of fluid?
It's going to stop rotating?
No, it keeps rotating.
That's right.
So what you're going to end up with is an artificially high deficit. Now, artificially high is not ooh, right? It's safe. You'd rather be artificially high than artificially low. But what that means is make sure you don't run out of fluid.
We can just put 2 bags up.
You could put 2 bags up, or, as I recommend, wherever the circulator's sitting, you're not attached to the wall.
The tubing's long enough.
You can put this anywhere you want, right? But when it's running out of fluid, it will sound like a car tire going flat. Just close your inflow or pause it, right? Add your next bag and start it back up. But the best thing is don't let it run dry. What am I missing? What am I forgetting?
These tubes come with the canisters? These are...
So those are tandem tubes.
Okay.
These here, those are tandem tubes. If it doesn't spill over into here, you don't have to throw it out.
Right.
But if it does spill over into this tube, then you throw it out. Make sure you don't throw out these tubes.
Yeah.
One other thing I did want to point out, the basics of the canisters. All canisters have some form of fashion. So if you look on the canister, excuse me, they're all labeled. You got patient, tandem, tissue sock, if you're doing a MyoSure, and vacuum. The only time you use the vacuum is for your primary source of vacuum. Back here. The reason you use that, there's an overflow valve in here. And what that does is if that back canister fills up, this will shut off this valve so the fluid doesn't come into the pump, or on the other systems you're using, it doesn't go into the wall, into the main pump in the basement. Okay? But if you connect a tandem tube here to here, this canister will fill up and it won't go over to the next canister. It'll just go on the floor. Yeah. So you want a tandem to those markings, not the center vacuum pump. You'll notice there's a little cord here, a power cord. This shelf was built to hold the MyoSure controller.
Oh, good.
Before you say, oh good, I don't necessarily agree with it, and here's why. It's a great place for it, but as you remember, or if you don't remember, when they do a MyoSure, the control unit has to be directly behind them. So that means you'd have to put the pump behind them. If everyone will remember to do that, then that's fine. Most facilities I go into, the pump is to the side of the patient. So you might want to rethink whether you want to use that or not.
Okay.
Personally, I like it on a separate table.
Right.
So you can wheel it directly behind the physician.
Okay.
Okay?
Okay.
What other questions? Oh, here's one other little tidbit. So, I'm going to run this for a second.
So if the suction comes unhooked from the under the drape for some reason, like it got kicked off or something, will it pause? Will it pause or anything like that? Oh.
So another little thing, tidbit. If you put your finger right here over that gold band, go ahead and put your finger down there. It's just air. Right there. Feel that? That's how you know the pumps, the vacuum pumps are working.
Okay.
Okay?